His God complex is out of control, and he's freaking paranoid and disconnected from reality in every way, as far as I can tell. And so it makes it really, really hard, because here I'm trying to calm his paranoias, but it's like I'm dealing with someone who is
psychotic.
Yeah.
What's up, YouTube? I'm Mike, and today I'm shooting a video going into what it is like for, in this case, my wife to go through these various steroid cycles with me. So I was going to shoot a video, which I still am going to shoot, about what it feels like coming off of a year-long Trenbolone cycle. I already made a video of what the effects were like on that cycle, and the other night I was getting ready to make a new one talking about what it felt like coming off, because I'm about to start my next blast or lengthy Tren cycle in some dose or another. So when my wife and I started talking about some of the effects that I've been experiencing in the last 6 months of being relatively off cycle, as some of you know, I'm never really completely off. I usually always find some excuse to take something, but it's been 6 months since I've been on Tren, maybe. I don't know, I have to dig back in the archive and find out exactly how long it's been. It feels like it's been forever. So what I want to try to get her to do today in sort of just a conversational format is go through what her experience is when I use various different compounds. I always have to get one burp in these videos. That. You notice that? It's like at least one. So I was going to have her just talk about Tren, but I think we're going to try to talk about various compounds, and we're just going to see where this goes. Usually I like to try to shoot these videos in one take. That's probably not going to happen here, and if it's echoing in this room, I apologize in advance. The acoustics in this house are just horrific. So that all being said, I know your feelings about Tren, but before we get to the Tren, if you can just try to give the audience and maybe any ladies who are either married to a guy or dating a guy or just in close proximity to a guy who is cycling anabolics, whether that's TRT all the way up to full-blown blasts, cruise, cuts, whatever. I want to try to get you to express some of your experiences in what that looks like to you. So for what you guys may or may not know, my wife is awesome in that she tries to understand that basically this is what I've chosen to do in my life and I'm going to do it, and so she in a lot of ways makes the best of it. We may do another video tonight about her tips and pointers on how to keep a relationship together during these cycles, but basically what I want from you is just your opinions. So obviously when I was completely natural and I started training and getting out of the toilet of being a drug addict and weighing like 130 pounds soaking wet, you got to go through watching me sort of start to rebuild my muscle and the confidence and the arrogance and, you know, feeling good about where my body was at way back in the very beginning. And then we transitioned from that into TRT. So in your estimation, is there a noticeable difference from a guy who's totally natural to a guy who is on just testosterone replacement therapy?
Yes.
Okay, so what did you notice that was different?
So I think for me it's a little bit hard because, like I've said before, I think that it's you're a very unique person. And so I don't know if this is what it will be like for everybody, but just my experience, with you, no matter what the drug has been, legal, illegal, anything, when you get on anything, I mean, I swear you get on antibiotics and suddenly you get a little manic. So you seem to get... Manic? Yeah, I would call it mania. Right. Like, so you get really, really excited about drugs. And then after you're on them a while and the effects start to weigh on you, well, then you seem to have low lows, and then you get off and suddenly you bounce up and high highs. So there seems to be, no matter what it is.
So I've talked about that a little on this channel when I've talked about I usually only run long esters, and guys who are starting TRT or starting compounds really at all, beginner guys are always asking that question, like, how long is it going to take before I start to feel the effects of the compound? Some people report that they don't feel a long ester for 4 weeks. That has never been my experience. I don't know why that would be your experience, because if you look at a serum concentration profile, when you inject something like, for example, Test E or Test C, the drug is going to spike in your system in that first 24 to 48 hours. So you're going to get a spike in the serum level in your blood, and then it's going to taper off over the course of the week. So why you would not feel anything in that pulse, I don't know. I have reported that I typically experience something like what she's talking about. When I started on TRT, within the first week or two, I would feel speedy, just kind of pumped up.
Yeah.
So, but you're saying that you feel like, so maybe that's placebo in me.
I don't know.
Because you notice it in a lot of different things.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if it's placebo or not, but I definitely noticed the difference.
Okay.
So it immediately seems to be almost everything you take right off the bat. It's a mood booster.
Okay.
And then it also seems to come with some mania, and everything you take seems to come with some kind of new aggression. So, and you're real sensitive to the sexual side effects of everything, it seems like.
Okay, so is to the best of your recollection, when I started on TRT, this is very vivid in my mind. So I don't know if it is in yours. What would you say, in the first, say, 4 weeks of using TRT, what kind of differences did you notice in my behavior, the full gamut, versus being just weight training?
You started to smile, and that had been gone for a while. You were just, it was a big mood boost. You seemed happy way more than usual.
Yeah.
And then but the other thing about the TRT, which I have to be a little careful because I don't want it to be telling my wishful thinking, but
right.
Because this is my favorite, is the TRT alone.
Okay.
So, but with the TRT, you seemed more even keel, and I don't think anybody could ever describe you as even keel in any way.
Right.
Because you're really up and down, but that's like the most even I ever remember you being in all the years I've known you.
And so that was one of the reasons, one of the first videos I ever produced on this channel was talking about my experience with TRT, and I think I titled it, Testosterone Replacement Therapy Saved My Life. So if you haven't seen that video, it's worth going back and looking at, because it explains how I felt coming from trying to use psych meds basically to treat my depression that I now believe was strongly connected to having testosterone levels in the very low end of normal. When I started TRT, my natural testosterone had tanked to 340 nanograms per deciliter. So while it's technically in the range, we all know that range covers guys that are 90 years old. So no one feels good, in my estimation, at that level. And when I started TRT, I was able to get off all the psych meds. I was using an e-cigarette at the time. I stopped using the e-cigarette, I stopped using the psych meds, and as she's reporting, my general mood was substantially improved during the early days of TRT.
I watched during that time, even the way you interacted with the kids was really different. I remember thinking, at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. Because I was really nervous before you started it, because, that's one more new thing. But it was like, suddenly we're laughing and having family time, and the kids weren't like rattling you with their noise all the time. You were able to handle their noise. You were able to handle their jabbering in a new way, a better way. I feel like all of us, once you got on TRT, this entire house went.
So I mean, that goes a long way to backing up what I said in the very early videos. Like I was saying, the testosterone replacement therapy made a significant difference in my general well-being and really all facets of my life. Unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the testosterone replacement therapy was definitely opening Pandora's box. Prior to using testosterone, I had never injected a drug of any kind. I hated needles. I was scared of needles. One of the reasons that I had put off even doing the TRT is because I didn't want the injections. So I was intending to get my TRT from a company where I would go and they would do the injections for me. And then, I won't go into all of those details why I ended up with the company that I'm with, but in the very beginning, I was very nervous about the needles. Once you get used to the needles, once you get used to injecting a hormone and you start to see how it affects you, the fear of using steroids in general, for me at least, started to wane. Because at the end of the day, testosterone is based, is very close to everything else that you could use, with the exception of some things that we'll talk about. So obviously the TRT didn't last long, and then I started, so I went from a TRT only at 200 milligrams, and then I jumped up and I did my first cycle at 500 milligrams a week. So again, we won't beat every cycle to death because I've made videos on all of these, but just in sort of a short bit, did you notice a substantial difference in general behavior from the TRT dose to a definitively super physiological dose at 500 milligrams?
Yes, and I forgot to mention about when you first started the TRT dose, there was a significant increase in your libido.
Yeah.
Significant. And then when we went to when you went to the 500, it was again a libido boost, and then it seemed like all of those positives remained, and then the aggression was just a lot more.
So you feel like aggression was the significant difference between 200 and 500. You get the same positives, but more aggression. More aggression
and a shorter fuse.
Yeah.
Now, not necessarily a shorter fuse than you had before the TRT.
Right.
But a shorter fuse. And you didn't, if I remember, and I've documented some of this, but I think it was then that I was noticing a little bit more of the irritability with the noise and the jabber and the movement around the house and stuff, more similar to what you had before, but again, not.
So for perfect transparency, and to be fair, I'm not saying that this is the cause, but again, as many of you know who've watched this channel, I am plagued by problems with estrogen. So when I started the TRT at 200 milligrams, they had me only on 1 milligram of Arimidex, and I got gyno, and we had to screw around playing with the dose until they finally got me dialed in at 1.5 milligrams of Arimidex. So you get that part figured out, and now I've got good, steady concentrations of estrogen and testosterone, and then I decide to up the ante and I go to 500 milligrams of test for the first time, and I have no way of knowing how my body's going to react to that. I don't know at this point in my steroid career that I'm a very, very high aromatizer. So that first test cycle at 500 milligrams, my E2 was all over the place. One of the things that compounded that problem was that the underground pharmacy that I got some of my product from, I thought I had purchased Arimidex, and I got a batch from Pharmacom Labs that ended up being, do you remember what was it the one with the L? I got the suicide inhibitor. You guys know what it is. Not Aromacin, Letrozole.
Letrozole, yeah.
I got Letrozole instead of Arimidex. So I'm popping what I think to be a Arimidex, and I knocked my estrogen into the toilet. So that first cycle, and really many of my early cycles, because I didn't know it was Letrozole. So I had some Arimidex that was coming from the pharmacy, and this other Arimidex, and I couldn't figure out why one pill seemed to work differently than the other, and it's because they weren't the same compound. So I was having all kinds of issues with my estrogen, and that compounded, I think, some of the mood problems, because without a doubt, estrogen has been the bane of my existence and the bane of her existence in this marriage. I mean, again, I don't want to beat this to death, but on the very low end, if my E2 gets too low, I can function, like I get erections, but I have no desire to touch her, no desire to perform with her, no emotional connection. Like I just totally disconnect emotionally completely. On the very high end, if my estrogen gets too high, I will have raging libido, but I start to have erectile problems. So it's just a fucking damn if you do.
The window seems to be like this. So every time in any of your cycles that we seem to get the estrogen dialed in, all of a sudden things started to get better.
Yeah. And so
and progesterone.
Yes, yeah. We'll get to that on the trend. So that's one of the reasons why when you guys see any of the videos on my channel, you will probably never see me take anything more than 500 milligrams of test as a base, or when I put test in my cycle, it's usually at 500 milligrams. I'm actually going to jump back to 500 milligrams starting tomorrow, which is why I'm making this video today, because I wanted to have a clean slate. So the biggest reason that I stay at 500 milligrams is because that is a known variable. I know at 500 milligrams, I can take 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day, and I'm perfectly in range, and I don't have any problems. So I would rather go with the 500 milligrams of test, know where I'm at, and then add other compounds, which we'll get to now. So again, I don't want to beat every compound, but then I did the test in the Deca with little Dbol. She did not like that at all. The Dbol, as I've said, did not sit well with my body. I did not feel good on it at all. The first week or so, I was sending her like gifts from the gym because my strength was going up, my intensity in the gym was going up, but I felt like I was gonna die like the majority of the time I was in the gym. I was texting her going, like, man, like I feel like the Hulk, but I feel like I'm gonna have a stroke at any given moment. So I only ran the Dbol for like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't even think we got to the 4-week mark before I started having a lot of signs that I thought were consistent with maybe a liver problem. And so I quit the Dbol. I tried a couple of cycles with Deca, and I'm not ready at this point to say that the Deca is what doesn't work well with my system. I never felt good on the Deca, and I think the reason ended up being the progestin / prolactin that is also caused by the Tren that I later figured out how to dial in. So what was the biggest problem that you think the Deca caused in our marriage?
Deca dick?
Yeah, that Deca dick is for real. It's one of the most frustrating things I have ever experienced because it's not like other types of drug-induced impotence. So most of the time that if you know, like I said, with my estrogen, when my estrogen gets out of line or something, I can just be non-functional. Back in the day when I used to use speed, I was totally non-functional. I cannot operate on any type of amphetamine at all, period. Just totally dick in the dirt. So the thing with Deca is that everything else could be working normally and I can have all the desire in the world and I could even get it up to start the act and would just lose it in the middle of the act. And this was relatively frequent.
Yeah, and it was very stressful for me because I'm feeling like I'm causing it and I didn't know all of these different things. Although he had talked about Deca dick, like he had talked about, and I had been through, you know, various amphetamines with you. But it was a constant emotional roller coaster for me, and it negatively affected our sex life more than physically, in my opinion. It negatively affected it emotionally, and there was so much anxiety surrounding it for me about whether or not I was going to cause that problem, or if he was going to think that, or if he was going to blame me for it, or if whatever it was so anxiety ridden that I felt like months of not enjoying sex at all.
Yeah, and so part of the problem, especially for me, is that I don't want to blame the steroids. So that's why I'm having her record this video with me, because when I first started experiencing the Deca dick, even knowing that Deca could cause this problem, I didn't want it to cause the problem because I just wanted to run the compound. So I would make, you know, I could blame her, or I could say, well, you know, if it wasn't for this or that or something, like I was constantly looking for something other than the fucking steroids to blame for the problems that were being caused. And that's one of the things that she's had to labor through, especially with the Tren, like just coping, really.
I think that goes for every compound or every medication just about that you've ever tried. And so I think also it becomes where it's difficult for me to be able to say, you know what, it's like when I'm gonna have my period, it's coming, and you're telling me it's coming, and I'm saying, no, it's not, I feel fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, I can see it, your behavior's changing. And no, it's not, because I feel good, I feel fine, so my behavior's not changing. But clearly it is, and that's what happens on every single one of these steroids in the beginning, where I'm like, oh no, I can tell the difference, I can see this happening. He's like, no, it's not, it's in your head, you think it's coming, whatever. And blaming everything else
that's
but
the perfect comparison, because I can't seem to always see the truth in what the hormones are doing to me in the same way that she and every other woman I've ever been with cannot seem to objectively look at what hormones do to them during their cycles. And so that's one of the biggest challenges in any of this, whether you're cycling alone, whether you're cycling together, whether you're just like, you're cycling, you're with a girl who's not menopausal, so she's having her own cycles. The whirlwind of all of the bullshit that happens when you're under the influence of hormones the denial, the confirmation bias, all of these things that go on. I'm over here telling myself, you know, it can't be the steroids because I want them to work, and she's saying it's probably the steroids, and I'm pointing the finger at, you know, her cycle. And so it is literally a miracle that we've been able to salvage this marriage. And I think that we're going to make another video about some of the tools that we used to do that, so that maybe we can help other people out there who might be going through the same thing.
I think it's interesting to note that when Mike was really wanting to do the Tren, and I was like, no, God, especially when it was the second time around, and I was like, we can't survive another one. I just don't think we can do it. And he got upset one day, and he was like, you are never to ever mention the Tren again in like associated with any of my behaviors. My behaviors have nothing to do with the Tren, and I don't ever want to hear it. And so
that's true.
It kind of took it off the table to talk about, but it didn't mean it wasn't affecting his behavior.
Yeah, one of the other challenges that you get into when you're cycling hormones with a partner is that the steroids can become the scapegoat, which is the way that I viewed it in the early going. Because Sarah and I have plenty of, we're doing better now, but we've had tons of relationship problems. We have so many reasons to have discord in our marriage that it makes it hard to see the forest for the trees, because I'm sensitive to the fact that she may be just pointing the finger at a hormone rather than objectively looking at the scenario, and she's possibly, you know, concerned that I'm blind to the effect of the steroids and I'm pointing the finger at her. And so it's very, very difficult, honestly, from one day to the next to know what is real. And
for both people, because here I am, when he's telling me that it's me, every time he says that, for the most part, let's be honest, I try to, if I try to examine myself to some degree, and then, so I'm like digging in and, oh my gosh, maybe I did cause this, maybe I did this, maybe I did that, maybe that, and sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's just not. And so it creates that for both of us, that insecurity or...
Yeah. So Deca did not go well dealing with the prolactin, the progesterone, the estrogen, the female hormones basically cause so many problems in the cycle that get added on top of all of the things that the male portion brings, which is the anger, the aggressiveness, the arrogance. Guys, you cannot underestimate. There is no way I could illustrate how big of a factor arrogance can be in your relationship. Like, it is so powerful in the gym, in the workplace, in the day-to-day life on the streets. Just there's so many ways that confidence and arrogance, or confidence and self-esteem, can be a powerful thing, a powerful positive thing in your life. But in a relationship, when you're walking around feeling like your shit literally doesn't stink, you're a god, she's a fucking peasant, she is lucky to be in your presence.
These aren't just things he felt, but these are things he said on a daily basis.
I have. In my Trenbolone is a love affair video, or whatever it is, the love story video, Tren, more than any drug, makes you feel superior to every person you come into contact with. And that includes your wife, your children, your parents. It is such an all-encompassing compound that, again, trying to find out what is real is very difficult, especially when she and I have at one point we're going to couples therapy, and our therapist used to always tell us that in so many ways there is no reality. There's her perception and my perception of a particular event, and both of those perceptions can be true, but mutually exclusive. And so we're like, wait a minute.
So frustrating.
What? Because we all view things from different angles, and our views are not necessarily inaccurate. They're based on our own internal processes, and she has her views based on her internal processes. And that's what can make relationships incredibly difficult. But anyway, that's another video. So
can I have a comment on that? So the TRT alone, even the 500 milligrams of testosterone, am I saying that right?
200 milligrams on TRT.
Yes, and then even when you upped it to the 500,
right.
Both of those he had a new confidence that was awesome. It was like it was knocking out some of the insecurities that had been causing a problem in our relationship. Plus, he seemed to just be like, he exuded like this confident, kind of powerful attitude. And then when we went to the Tren specifically, but not just the Tren, but the Tren especially, it went from confidence to arrogance. And I would say misplaced arrogance, but not arrogance, not in your physical appearance.
Yeah.
But like in
But I didn't
self-worth.
actually become God.
Yes.
Are you sure, though?
Yes, I'm 100% sure. I'm
so
not
there's
certain.
no chance that the Tren makes you God.
I'm not certain you didn't become Satan, but you definitely become God.
Yeah, so, I was probably Satan.
You've always tended to lean that direction anyway.
Yeah.
So that was the difference. So the confidence, like I would never want him to go back to the lack of confidence before TRT.
Yeah, so that's worth mentioning. Like, and this is not going to be true of every guy, because some of you guys were maybe better looking than me to begin with, in better shape than me to begin with. I weighed 135 pounds, guys. 5'10", 135, skin and bones. My ribs were sticking out. Okay, so you can imagine how little confidence that I had, but I got this girl with that body. And so when you've been skinny your entire life, and then suddenly in the course of a single year, you put on 30 pounds of muscle, and you've got all of the fucking added confidence and self-esteem, and you look good, and you're starting to get responses from people that you see, and girls look at you different, and they talk to you differently in the gym. It's like a girl that just got breast implants. To some degree, which she actually did during this process, to some degree, you start to think like, well, you know, if the old me got you, what can the new me get? And that can really, fuck up a relationship. So, but anyway, we're too long on the relationship part.
Let's just be clear.
Here we go.
That the breast implants that I had always wanted, he said to me one time, he was like, okay, here's the deal. You can get the breast implants. And I'm like, what? Okay, yeah. And he's like, he didn't tell me at first, but then later on, he was like, okay, but here's the deal. You're going to get the implants, and I'm going to take,
Tren, yeah.
And then I'm going to do Tren. And so that was like the trade-off.
So this is how I worked her out of after my first Tren cycle, she was like, never again. Like, never again. If you do Tren again, we are going to get divorced. And I knew at the end of the first Tren cycle, I was going to take a second one. So I had to figure out, like, how can I fix this? So one day I'm in the car, and I was like, you know what? I've been doing all these things for me, and that's totally unfair. And I was spending a bunch of money on it in the beginning. And so it was like, I'll buy her breast implants under the agreement that I get another Tren cycle.
Except it wasn't an agreement. It was just like, well, now I did that for you, so I get to do this. And it was just
either way
setup.
Well, maybe it was a masterminded setup, but regardless, it got us to more Tren cycles, which basically created this channel. So, you know, so you guys are welcome. So
like and subscribe and
like, subscribe, bell buttons, all that shit. I never tell people to subscribe to my videos because I hate it when people do that. But when I go through my analytics, I get way more views from people who are not subscribed, which either means that I suck and you guys don't come back, or you just don't, like, I need to tell you to click the fucking button. So please click the button and the bells and all the shit so that you can get all this exciting content that we're trying to produce here. So we've talked a little bit about injectables. The new thing that came into play at this point was I decided to go down the avenue of orals.
Yeah.
And I had intentionally steered clear of orals because basically, I think this is true, every oral is effectively a fast-acting hormone. And because of the fact that I've had so many drug addict problems in my life, I was nervous about anything that I would feel immediately because that tends to be what engages my addictive personality the most. So the first oral, well actually I did the Dbol. I don't even count that because it was like 2 weeks and done. The first oral that I actually really enjoyed and still love it to this day was Anavar. And in my estimation, I made a video about this, I still to this day believe that Anavar is one of the rare things in life that is all good and no bad at all. I feel so good on Anavar, and I get so strong, and the aesthetic is so good, and it's mild on my liver. I would take Anavar every single day for the rest of my life if I could do it. But you had a very different experience of it.
I listened to him make that video from the other room and was like, this guy is full of shit. Because the second, like, it was like, pop the pill and within minutes, he did the, you know, it's a mood boost because it's a new drug, so that's real exciting. But then he was like, just so aggressive. At the time, I would have said that he would go from 0 to 60, like angry wise, 0 to 60 in nothing flat. But then
sorry, I don't know why my camera continues to cut off in the middle of these videos. I've got to get that figured out. But so we were talking about Anavar. You were saying that you were in the other room and I was making the video and you were like, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah, so I at the time I would have said that as far as like his anger or his fuse goes, that, you know, he went to 0 to 60 and nothing flat. But that was before the Tren. So the Tren was way worse. So anyway, but the Anavar seemed to, suddenly he would just get angry and it would be like, oh, where did that come from? And he was immediately, like, day one seemed more aggressive. I saw it in traffic. I saw it.
So I would contact you on the road. Like, so if you haven't watched my video, on Anavar, I'll link it up here on one of these sides. I found out that taking caffeine with your Anavar tablet will increase its effects. And when I would take a Red Bull with the Anavar, I would spin up so hardcore and just be pumped driving down the road, feeling so good. I would be calling her on the phone, telling her how amazing I felt, how much I love this compound. I could only see all of these positives. And this has been true every single time I have done Anavar. I have never had a day on Anavar that I didn't feel good. But you seem to think that I had a shorter fuse and was more irritable.
So that was the thing, that he would be just fine, and then suddenly he would flash and be angry, and then he would act like nothing had happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just flashed on all of us here in this house, and then we're supposed to just act like it didn't happen. It was like he really didn't register how angry he had just appeared to the rest of us. And even when it wasn't at us or just about us, it was unsettling.
Yeah, so
I was scared. So each one of these things, I'm scared of going back to where we were, back to where he used to be. And so, you know, before the good TRT phase. And so I was also probably especially sensitive to these flashes because I'm like, oh no, we're gonna go back to angry all the time, Mike.
Yeah, so there's a lot to all of this. And every time I add a compound, I'm probably also dicking with some other factor. So it was 500 milligrams of test, and we had to get the E2 dialed in, and then I added another compound, and on the Anavar cycle, it was the first time that I think I'd ever cut. So I can't remember if I had started the Tren on that cycle or not. That's something I'll have to look into. I think the first time I ran Anavar, I can't remember. I'll have to dig back and find out if I ever ran Anavar by itself without the Tren. Actually, you know what? I did. I ran the Anavar for a couple of weeks before I started the Tren for the express purpose of trying to figure out what the two were.
Yeah.
So one of the things to keep into consideration is that I feel the Tren very quickly, but it seems that across the board she feels that the orals are another level of personality changes because yeah, go ahead.
The Proviron. Remember that?
God, the Proviron.
On Proviron, like the very first day he took it, and he's saying, how could I possibly feel it? And he's like, I think I feel it. And he's like bouncing around here, like super happy. The very first day he took it, that night, he was like super happy and horny as hell.
So I took the Proviron at the recommendation, I think, of somebody in my videos who was saying that the Proviron would help offset some of the Deca problems. So I had been on Deca for a while. I was not feeling life at all, and we had a bunch of problems, and then I started taking Proviron. I think I was taking 50 or 75 milligrams a day. I want to say it was 50 milligrams a day of Proviron. Dude, I have never in my lifetime on this planet, including the horniest teenager, I have never experienced libido like I experienced in that Proviron. It was so strong. I couldn't stand it. Like, I could not stop thinking about it. I'm just all day long at work. Like, I don't want to get like super graphic, but I mean, it's like running down my leg, like all day. I could not get enough. And it was just like, I think she enjoyed it in the very beginning because it was something new. Like I was crawling all over you.
Yes, and every single conversation was about sex, and he was sending me like sexual text messages, gifs, like everything was about porn and sex and
Cat, leave that alone.
Everything. We could do nothing without it being about sex.
Yeah, so that was the Proviron. Obviously, we've covered the Anavar. I've done Cat. We have a new member of the family. This is Widow, because what do you do when you're moving 4 people into a fucking 36-foot RV? Clearly, you have to add a cat. So now we have this cat who's hell-bent on knocking my camera over. This video is probably running on massively long. So what else? So I guess at this point, so we've talked about some orals, some typical long-acting esters, and then finally, the one that everybody cares the most about, the godfather of them all, the God hormone, in fact, I believe it is, we get to the Tren. And I have made numerous videos about this. I'm gonna make some more, so I'll shut the fuck up for a minute. Tell the audience how much you loved the Tren.
Right? We've been on the brink of divorce since the day we got married. And my greatest advice to anybody out there who's with somebody who's gonna start Tren is to do it before they start. Get your divorce before they start. It's not worth it. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst thing. I mean, the speed was bad, but the Tren is worse.
So to be fair, right now what we're talking about with the Tren is blasting Tren, yes, which is basically anything 200 milligrams and above. I have gone as high as 550 milligrams of Tren. In retrospect, I don't know how either of us survived it, because the side effects on 300 are more than enough. 200 is like the bare minimum where the side effects are reasonably tolerable. And so, the first cycle I did was 200 milligrams of Tren. I can't remember if I went up to 300 that cycle. I think I probably got up to 300. And then the second time I ran Tren, I think I started at 300, went up to 550. Would you agree that the negative side effects from the Tren do not seem to be dose dependent above about that 200 mark? Do you think there was a substantial difference in my personality at, say, 500 milligrams of Tren versus 300 milligrams or even 200?
I think it's a little bit hard to say for sure, because when you were on the 500, you were also on so much other stuff. You were on
too much shit.
So, but how significant? Do I think there was some difference? Yes, but it seemed, maybe it's because I couldn't tell, but it seemed to be really, you became such a dirty person.
Dude, the Tren is no joke, guys. I mean, I could make a video all day long, every day, telling you how serious Tren is. When you say dirty, what are we talking about? Are we talking about physically? In fact, I made a video saying that Tren makes you dirty inside and out. It makes you so dirty-minded. But the sweating and the night sweats, the sweating, the excess oil production, it makes my feet stink. It is everything.
That seemed to be not a significant difference between the 200 and 500. But the internal dirty seemed, to me, what I was seeing of it seemed worse on the 500 than the 200.
When I was on 500 milligrams of Tren, my life was basically eat food, think homicidal thoughts all day long, all day. And I'm talking about when you're on the road. I think Greg Doucette, somebody talked about this. I can't remember who talked about it. They were saying one of the things about Tren, the Tren aggression, is it's not like snap. It's not usually just snap and start punching somebody kind of aggression. It's like sinister, cold, calculated, like serial killer level, depraved kind of aggression. Like you're driving down the road, you get into some road rage, and it's not like I'm just gonna smash this guy off the road. It's like, I don't even want to say the things I think. Like it is next level depraved kind of thinking. And it's not just depraved in aggression, it's depraved in sexuality. I don't know how much money I spent on sex toys when I was on Tren. I was just buying them for her constantly. Different vibrators, different dildos. Try this, try that, try this with that.
I was
like, I'm trying to get it 3 times a day. So we're having sex 3 times a day regularly. And it's not like 3 times, like 5 minutes. It's like, I want to have sex, I want to finish, then I want you to keep playing with toys for 20 or 30 minutes before I can get ready to go again. And I want to do this 3 times a day.
And we have kids. It was exhausting, but it was so exhausting in every way. And I feel like I aged a lot during his Tren process. And even to help, I mean, I didn't do it to help with that, but it did help when I was on some things too for part of that time that boosted my libido higher than it's ever been since I was a teenager. And then it was like, I was keeping up better, but it was so much on the Tren. I was like, he'd be like, no, try this toy, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Like, not that I want to have sex, I don't want these toys. Please stop buying me toys and sex furniture. And I mean, it was outrageous, and I was just exhausted.
Dude, there's pieces of sex furniture in there. They're hundreds of dollars a piece. We got chains hanging from the ceiling. Like, I'm telling you, it's depraved. And you can't, this is not like just me, I don't think. I've read, Derek has made tons of videos of the stuff guys have talked about they do on Tren. Like, every bit of this 100% is real. Like, if there is anything that's already in you, and let me clarify, none of these drugs make you somebody you're not. I'm already dirty and angry and horny and depraved and homicidal. I'm already all of those things naturally. The Tren just turns the volume up. It's like whatever fucking song you're listening to, that bitch is getting maxed out all the way, and you lose contact with reality. Like, the worst thing about it is we're sitting here talking about this, and I'm reliving some of these things right now, and it'll be a miracle if I get through the night without pinning that shit. Like, I just want to do it right now. Like, let's go.
Well, and the other thing,
20 more weeks, baby.
The other thing that happened with the Tren, I feel like, was that, so for all of Mike, for these long esters, the come up is a bitch.
Yeah.
And so that's the hardest part. Well, then once the come up is over, we're cruising a little bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're cruising a little bit, we're kind of figuring out this dose, and then he'll get angry about something and be like, fuck it, and I'm going in and pinning some more, and then so his dose starts going up again. So it was also hard to tell like how much was from the constant come up.
That's a really great point. So every one of these long esters, the most unstable that I get on that cycle is during that first 3 to 5 weeks. Because every time you pin, you get that spike like I talked about, and then it starts to fall off, and then it goes up, and it just kind of stair steps until you get to peak serum concentration. My body does not react well to the increase. I love the come up. That's my favorite part, but it's when I'm the most unhinged. And so that can be like, I'm getting ready to jump to 500 milligrams of test tomorrow. I've been doing 200 milligrams of test. Tomorrow I'm gonna pin 250, and we're gonna jump to 500. And so the next 3 to 4 weeks, she's gonna be experiencing the old familiar come up phase. And that is absolutely any drug. Obviously, again, with the Tren, it's substantially more pronounced, and the effects come on very early just because they're so potent. It's not that the Tren is faster acting than any of the other esters. It's just that, well, any of the other enanthate esters. It's just that it comes with so many markers, so many side effects, you cannot miss it. So
one of the things, sorry.
No, go.
One of the things that you mentioned about like whatever you already are, whatever's already inside you, that's what seems to come out. Mike deals naturally with some paranoia, but you put all this stuff in his system, and the paranoia is so out of control that it feels like to me, it feels like he's so far from reality that I can't even take anything seriously. So especially during the Tren, because his God complex is out of control, and he's freaking paranoid and disconnected from reality in every way, as far as I can tell. And so it makes it really, really hard, because here I'm trying to calm his paranoias, but it's like I'm dealing with someone who is
psychotic.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a quick story. I think it was the 500 milligram Tren cycle. It was somewhere between 300 and 500. We were lifting at LA Fitness and we're walking into the gym. We're just walking in front of the building. And there's some guy, you know, like blonde hair, kind of long hair. He was probably $150, I don't know. He just smiled at her. He just kind of like, I felt like he smiled at her. He was like a kid, yeah. He just kind of like he was just walking and he just made eye contact and he just kind of was like, hi, with a smile and kind of bobbed his head. And she kind of smiled back. And I'm like, who the fuck are you smiling at? You know this fucking guy? What do you need to smile for? So you see some fucking dude on the street, why does that require you to smile? I don't understand why the fuck he's smiling at you. Why are you smiling at him? I mean,
it just
see him. Just like that. It popped off. So we go into the fucking gym. She's just kind of let it go. She doesn't even know who I'm talking about. We go into the gym. The whole time I'm lifting, I'm watching. I'm like a fucking chicken over here, my head, just looking around to see if she's talking to anybody, where she's lifting, what she's doing. I'm scanning the gym the whole time. This was one of the short periods of my life where I was actually doing cardio. At the end of my lift, I go upstairs and I'm on the recumbent bike. I'm doing cardio on the bike. And she was down on the floor, I could see her. And so I'm just kind of watching, I'm doing cardio, no big deal. I look down at my phone, I look back up, and I see her walking toward the bathroom. No big deal. I'm not tripping, she's going to the bathroom. But it just so happens that down that hall where the men and women's bathrooms are, there's another, like, I guess it's like a handicap accessible or whatever the term is. It's like an accessible bathroom. It's like a family bathroom. It has a shower in there and it's a single little bathroom that you can go in there and lock the door. She goes to the bathroom. She doesn't come back fast enough for me. And the gears start turning. But at first you're trying to tell yourself, don't freak out, dude. Like, she's never given you any reason to think she's gonna do anything, but the gears start turning and then these thoughts, they just pop in. And so all of a sudden this little voice in my head goes, what if she went in that family bathroom? What if she went in that family bathroom with that motherfucker she was smiling at when we walked into the gym? Like, the fucking homicidal thoughts that start coming out of my head while I'm just pedaling my ass off on this bike. And of course, 30 seconds later, she comes walking out and I'm texting her like, what the fuck are you doing? She's like, what? I was talking to the lady that was in there cleaning the bathroom. She was telling me some whole story about some person she knows. But in my world, my wife was bent over in the bathroom with some fucking random guy that smiled at her walking in the gym. This is not a good way to live life, guys. Because when you think these thoughts, it's like they happen to you. I'm seeing this shit in my head. She might as well have done it. And the Tren Paranoia, that is one of the things that is so unbelievably hard to control.
That was the night, I think, that you threw your wedding ring in the trash can at the gym. And I wasn't aware of anything. And it was so bad that he threw his wedding ring in the trash. And I'm like, all I was doing was my workout. I went to get a bottle of water from the thing and started talking to the lady. And
I'm like, no, you stand next to me.
And he was like, he was real loud in the gym. He was like, you know, I will kill that motherfucker. And so other people are looking and I'm like, wouldn't even know, nobody else even knows what's going on. Just this guy is losing it.
Yeah, so.
It was real bad. So, and then I deal with all the consequences of having done something that I didn't do.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, you think it, you see it. It's like you might as well have just walked in and caught this happening. The thoughts are so vivid, and don't even get me started on the fucking nightmares. Like, oh my God, on Tren, the night, you're laying in a puddle of sweat, she's laying in your puddle of sweat, I'm having these horrific, super detailed nightmares, and I'm waking up, and she's guilty the second I wake up.
He's so angry. That night at the gym, we had been laughing, because I remember I was thinking on the way there, like, maybe this isn't gonna be so bad because this is really fun. We were laughing, having so much fun in the car, and then we got there and it was just like marriage over. It
was a smile. It was one.
And I didn't even see him.
The guy just acknowledged that she existed on this fucking plane, and I went off. And most of us, I mean, nobody got hurt. I didn't do anything necessarily besides fucking foam at the mouth and fucking melt down. And that's just, guys, that's one experience. That's one little tiny couple of hour window of, I mean, I ran Tren for a year straight. Now, this all being said, these things were all experiences that primarily took place at doses greater than 200. So to try to bring this marathon video to a close, what is your objective, unbiased opinion on the Tren cruise? 50 milligrams of Tren per week with 200 milligrams of test, 500 milligrams of test. What did you think about the low dose trip?
I think if you had started with the 50 milligrams, I would have hated it. But since it was after all the other stuff, I think it was great. So it was that was, you asked before, was a significant difference between the 200 and the 500. And I overall no, but there was a significant difference between 50 and 200. So the 50 was way fewer side effects, way fewer of the negative side effects. You still have to wash the sheets pretty much every day because they are a swimming pool.
Not at 50.
It was definitely worse than your regular. It was immediately when you got off of it. When you got off of that 50, the sheets were not as bad as they were before.
Guys, don't buy white sheets if you're gonna do Tren. I'm telling you right now, do not buy white sheets because it's like when you do Tren for extended periods of time, you sleep on white sheets. I don't give a shit how much she washes them. It's like, you ever seen the Shroud of Turin? The shroud they claim that was laid on top of Jesus Christ, and it has like the outline of his supposed body on the shroud. That is what you get on the sheets. You just get this stain on the guy's side of the bed because
the decomposing body.
It's like the decomposing body. Something just comes out of your pores on Tren.
And you still had the Tren smell, and you still had some of the Tren sweats, just milder. You had the other, what was the other? Oh, this Tren sleeplessness. It wasn't to the same degree.
Not as bad.
On the 500, it's just like he doesn't sleep. So who knows how much is from what? Because not sleeping at all is going to make you a little nuts.
I'm betting I sleep 4 hours a night on 500 milligrams of Tren.
And that's
after
Ambien,
20 milligrams of Ambien.
That's with...
I wasn't using anything else back then. So
20 milligrams of Ambien, and the guy is, and even if you get 4 or 5 hours, it's so broken.
It's broken, but you're not feeling it. I mean, like, you get up, I sleep 4 hours on Tren, I'm ready to go to the fucking gym first thing in the morning.
But it still has a psychological
effect.
But
psychologically, it's debilitating. And I think, people have talked about, is Tren neurotoxic? No, it is not neurotoxic, I think. But if there is any neurodegeneration caused by the Tren, I am supremely confident that it's not the Tren, it's the lack of sleep. No one can operate for extended periods of time on no sleep, especially when you're putting your body through all of the strenuous workouts and stuff that Tren allows you to do. I mean, the Tren's got me having sex 3 times a day. I'm killing 2-hour workouts 5 to 6 days a week. I'm just talking 90 miles an hour. I'm going to work, just fucking #1 salesman in the company, blowing and going. It's just, you're just a ball of energy. And then you get no ability for your body, especially your brain, to really repair itself. And those effects are cumulative, I promise you.
And for the women out there, that this is something if you're like me, you can relate to in some way, because if you have PMS or PMDD bad like I do, then you have those for a couple of nights of the month when you have those night sweats, and then you have that just bad sleep, so then you're irritable and you can't tell what's from the sleep and I'm always like, I feel a little bit irritable today, but I think it's because of my lack of sleep. I'm always saying that at that time. And it's just like that on steroids. It's like PMS on steroids. And so if you're trying to find some way to relate to what he might experience, it's that. It just seems much worse.
Yeah, so this is probably a long video. I have no idea how long we've been talking about this. I think because of how this has gone, I think we're definitely going to shoot some more videos talking about some of the strategies that she's employed trying to keep this marriage together. If you guys have any questions, I would kind of be interested in doing a question and answer video. So if you guys put any questions you may have for her or for me, how we deal with raising kids, keeping our marriage together, work, cycling. She's done some steroid cycles, several of her own. One of the things I was hoping to get into in this video also was to talk about the differences between bulking and cutting cycles. You could go into that briefly if there's anything really of importance.
The only thing that I would say is when you're on a cutting cycle, you have to add hangry to the mix, which is also miserable, because hangry, for him, normally he's hangry, like always. Anytime he's just like the least bit grumbly tummy. And
then with the cutting cycles and the low calories, the sugar crashes are a major problem for me.
Oh yeah.
So that's a whole other layer. We could sit here for 2 hours and make this video. So hopefully this is enough of a starter. Again, maybe this video has created some questions in you guys' mind or gals' mind about any of these topics, what it's like living with somebody that cycles, what it's like cycling together, training together, raising kids together.
Because we haven't even talked about the GH or what it's like living with somebody pinning stuff all the time or trying to keep everything sorted. I mean, there's a lot to it.
Maybe this will be part one of a marathon a video talking about all of these things, but you guys are always asking for steroid content, and I know everybody loves the Tren, and I'm guessing that the overwhelming majority of you are either in relationships, have transient relationships because you're constantly going through girls. So hopefully, you know, some of this kind of back and forth can be informative, as I'm always hoping, and educational. And always, guys, remember the most important thing, no matter what you are doing, whether it's TRT, test cycles, full-blown Tren cycles, no matter what, protect the cycle. We'll see you on the next one.